everyone, both EcoAg staff and EcoAg friends and family, to our first brown bag session, the title of which is, I believe, Lunchtime with Landscapes. We are really excited to be starting these sessions and to offer an opportunity for folks to learn more about different leaders within the 1000 Landscapes broader partnership and folks that we engage with, and give people an opportunity to get to know some of the amazing work that they are doing, and also just to have a space to talk about some really exciting and interesting landscape issues and progress that's being made around the world. So I'll just ask, I see four faces that aren't usually here, but three that are completely new to our EcoAg staff. So maybe Siobhan, you can start and just say your name and where what your affiliation is. So who you're joining from, where you're joining from today.
Hi, I'm Siobhan, and I'm with Collaborating for Resilience, and I'm a research analyst. So nice to meet all of you.
Welcome. Katie, maybe you can go next.
Katie Duell. I'm the Senior Conservation Director at the Center for Large Landscape Conservation, and I'm joining from Missoula, Montana.
Welcome. And Courtney?
Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Chibetio. I work with Steve over at Tech Matters on the Terrasso project, largely focused on land PKS right now. And I'm joining you from Asheville, North Carolina.
Welcome. That's great. And hi, Steve. Great to have you join us during this time. So happy for you to be here. I'd love to introduce our speaker for today's session, John Russia. He is an old friend and collaborator with Eco-Agriculture Partners and also with 1000 Landscapes. I'm going to put his bio in the chat. And John, if you want to just go ahead, you have the floor, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about just your background, and then we can get started with our moderated discussion.
Sure. I am John Russia, born and bred near the village where the Obama Senior was born in Western Kenya, and brought up from a rural background, peasant farmers as my parents, and hence I grew and derived our livelihoods on the farm and in the village. And so throughout my studies, I just chose to be able to undertake a bachelor's degree in agriculture in Kenya. And then I went ahead and wanted to do more of studies in matters affecting land management. And so I went ahead and did a master's degree in land management. And then after some time, I joined the World Agroforestry Center, ICRAF, to work on specific research on land management activities. And then after that, joined Cornell University from the year 2007 to the year 2011, doing a PhD on soil and crop sciences with a minor on rural development. And it was through my interaction, my stay at Cornell, that I got in touch with this professor who happened to be Louise Buck. And after she took me through some course on landscape activities and the environment, a seminar course series altogether, then we just bonded. And when I came back to Kenya in 2011, I began working on a number of assignments together with Eco-Agriculture Partners. And then from that time up to date, I have activities which I undertake with EcoAg support altogether. But then I also went ahead to start a career in research focusing on climate smart agriculture and dealing with how climate change affects agriculture and landscapes, and then ways of developing resilience, ways of mitigation, bring about improved productivity. And then we began doing it not just at the farm level, but at landscape level. Then as time went by now, then my profile of activities and portfolio kept increasing. And then I began handling more complex assignments, both with EcoAg, but then also with the research institute that I work with, that is the CGIAR, and specifically working on projects to do with climate change and agriculture, which is hosted in Kenya. And the region I work in actually is Eastern Africa, Central and Southern Africa. And so with that, I began working more on landscape scale activities to be able to bring about climate smart agriculture at scale, and then now end up now getting the interest of wanting to do something more interesting in Kenya to be able to showcase innovations that can bring about climate smart landscapes, and then hence the journey that is ongoing up right now.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. You already have a very long list of auspicious accomplishments. So one of the things, and one of the things that we as EcoAg and 1,000 Landscapes for 1 Billion People have been working with you very closely on over the last, I would say, year or 2 years maybe, is around coalition building for landscapes, and basically garnering interest and momentum from many different types of actors throughout a landscape in order to advance a variety of landscape initiatives and activities in a way that is more coordinated and engaging as many folks as possible. And so that kind of brought you to the creation of KenLAP, which is the Kenya Landscape Actors Platform. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the inspiration for the creation of KenLAP. What were some of the needs or gaps that you were seeing in your landscape work in Eastern Africa that you felt like a coalition, and specifically some of the work that 1,000 Landscapes was doing around coalition building could help address?
Yes. First of all, from in the post-colonial period, from 2011 onwards, when I came back from the US and now in Kenya, I joined a team, a research team, and also I've always been part of an NGO that began in the year 2004, focusing on sustainable agriculture and resource management. Now, in the course of working across different agroecological zones in Kenya, I realized that there is a need to actually end up providing not just expertise in bringing about integrated landscape management, but I realized there is something much more than expertise that's needed altogether. And one thing that's needed from the part of the government of the Republic of Kenya was an enabling environment that can help different stakeholders or actors to be able to restore degraded landscapes, but then also at the same time end up enhancing the landscape activities for those landscapes where people are staying on and deriving their livelihood, specifically the crop cultivators and the livestock keepers. Now, then there's this unique problem that's there in Kenya. Kenya's population by the year 2011 was about 51 million people. Kenya's landmass 80% of it is either arid or semi-arid. And 20% of it is having that high rainfall. And then you also see the population distribution is such that you get about 80% of Kenya's population staying in this 20% area, while the smaller population are staying in the rangelands, which are arid and semi-arid. Now, that provides a challenge in terms of people having food security through the pastoralism, and then also through the crop growing altogether, or through fisheries and such like that people end up deriving from, livelihoods from. And then Kenya has not been a food secure country in terms of producing sufficient food itself altogether. We have had to rely on importing food from neighboring countries, be it Uganda and Tanzania, that also have similar agroecologies, but they do not have that big chunk of land that is either arid or semi-arid. Now, as this kept on bugging me, then eco-agriculture partners, through different initiatives, kept engaging me together with other Kenyan leaders who are from diverse landscapes. For example, in the year 2012 to the year 2014, we worked on the East African community assignments with EcoAg in terms of developing sustainable community markets approach to improve livelihoods in the Mount Elgon landscape, which cuts across Uganda and Kenya. This transboundary landscape gave me an opportunity to also end up learning more about how different the mountain landscapes are from the rangelands, for example, and those which are the coastal landscapes that we have in Kenya. Towards the year 2015-16, with EcoAg, we began working on learning landscape networks in East Africa. Towards the year 2017, we began working on the African Landscapes Dialogue. Now, by the time it's 2017, the actors that I had been meeting from Kenya happened to be the same leaders that I'm actually meeting all together. This happened to be David Kuria of Kenvo, David Wanjohi in Laikipia County. This happened to be Kamau Mbogo of Lake Naivasha Landscape Restoration. And then in the African Landscapes Dialogue of the year 2017, we had some specific outcomes. And one of the outcomes of that dialogue happened to be multi-stakeholder partnerships that recognize and support farmers, including women and youth, and contribute to sustainable land management to be able to improve coordination mechanisms within landscapes for greatest impact and also ensure sustainability. Now, the Kenyans who were in the African Landscape Dialogue in Ethiopia in 2017 in March now said, please, when we go back to Nairobi, can we start meeting and come up with our own multi-stakeholder partnership? Now, when we came, we didn't quite take off, but I happened to join one multi-stakeholder partnership in Kenya around climate smart agriculture. And this landscape and this partnership is called the Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Multi-Stakeholder Platform. Now, this platform is one that is actually has taken the lead in Kenya in terms of advocating for the scaling of climate smart agriculture and putting the government on its toes to be able to do that. This platform has positioned Kenya as a leader in climate smart agriculture initiatives in the region of Eastern and Southern Africa. And then as time has gone by, the platform was instrumental in doing fundraising and capacity building, and they've got a number of thematic working groups which work, and they are affiliated to the Ministry of Agriculture with a focal point in the Ministry of Agriculture, and I'm part and parcel of that platform. When I saw it thrive, then we ended up having another African landscape dialogue in Arusha in 2019, and that was in end of October, then in November. By that time, we met again. And then we kept looking at each other. And the colleagues from Laikipia and from Naivasha and from Mount Elgon and from the rangelands and from the coast are saying, John, so we just keep meeting, and do we have to depend on eco-agriculture partners to hold a dialogue in Africa for us to meet as Kenyans? And when we meet, we're always meeting outside of our country. We are doing injustice, yet we are think tanks in our own country. And then when we came back, we now said, yes, let us work on meeting and see how we can start off this initiative. As we began doing it, unfortunately, COVID-19 hit, and we were on lockdowns and we couldn't meet. Then the year 2020 went by, 2021 went by, 2022, when the COVID is now, towards the end of the year 2022. Then we began meeting again, and at that time, getting in touch with EcoAg, there was a discussion that we can actually have a study to see how the landscapes are operating in Kenya and see how we can fast track or accelerate having a more coordinated mechanism of having this multi-stakeholder partnership. I actually took the lead in doing that study across the country, and each of the landscapes that we talked with had just one thing at the end. We are working in silos. We are duplicating activities. We need to work together more and more. We need a coordinating mechanism. We need a platform. By the end of the year, we realized we had been marking time, and there is no excuse that, at this time, we should not have a platform that we can now say is coordinating specifically landscape activities in Kenya. And hence, in the year 2023, last year, the Kenya Landscape Access Platform was born. And so we are about a year old. We just celebrated our birthday, but we are strong and eager to also together to create impact at scale within the country towards achieving food security amidst the diverse agroecologies of Kenya, from the coastal Indian Ocean all the way to the rangelands, to the mountains of Mount Kenya, Kilimanjaro, and Mount Elgon, and even the Lake Victoria. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you, John. And it sounds like one of the sort of key elements of KenLAP coming together is sort of the routine meeting of the same leaders in the same space and getting together and realizing that you all had, at the end of the day, even if you were currently working in silos at the time, a common vision and mission. And so I'm curious, in addition to that component, what were some of the other enabling conditions that helped KenLAP really come together in a meaningful way? Because I think one of the things that a lot of landscapes and landscape partnerships struggle with is creating those open environments around different stakeholders really being able to come together and feel comfortable engaging in a way that really is impactful and effective. So what were some of the other enabling conditions that sort of helped you materialize?
Yes, Kenya's administration is divided from the national level. You get into the counties, and there are 47 counties in Kenya, 2 of which are cities, Nairobi City and Mombasa City. Then 45 of these are counties that have got activities which are agricultural. Now, apart from meeting through the eco-agriculture initiatives, either within Kenya or within the region, we also kept meeting when we have got county-specific engagements which are related to landscapes. And this could be through the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change, and Forestry in Kenya, or through the Ministry of Agriculture, or when, for example, the international organizations, the likes of IUCN, Conservation International, the Nature Conservancy, are having specific events, WWF, and the such like, then we could meet again. Then we realized that actually, as we are meeting, we are generating a lot of manuals around landscape management. For example, restoring degraded lands, and some which are focusing on climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation, some manuals being developed around food systems and livelihoods. And as we were meeting, we were always getting the diversity of the landscapes I mentioned about, some from the mountains and the hills, some from the forest lands, like the Mau Forest Complex, then some from the farmlands, then those from the rangelands, then those around the water bodies. And then we kept thinking, yes, I think we have got this amazing resource, or that's people who are capable of actually working as volunteers to just generate tons and tons of knowledge, resources that are useful and contribute towards the landscape management. And then now with that, we now thought, because these institutions are in Kenya and we work with each other, and they are either community-based organizations, non-governmental organizations. I mentioned that I began and actually founded one called Sustainable Agricultural Management Africa, and then the others, and we keep meeting. Then realize that actually with our little resources that we have, we can end up still coming together and working to ensure that we end up having an impact. Having an impact how? It is because the aspect of us being think tanks and helping the government of Kenya and the county governments to function came out. These county governments, the 47 county governments, always began coming up with what we call the County Integrated Development Plan. In this County Integrated Development Plan, which follow political cycles, and they are 5-year, they feed into the national development plans, actually, or they feed into each other. And a number of these actors that we kept meeting with were the ones who were being brought on board as either consultants to be able to help with developing those county plans and or those policy documents. Then we realized that actually we have an opportunity in Kenya to provide a better enabling environment by guiding the government of Kenya, state government of Kenya, and the 47 county governments where we are all spread and come from, to be able to come up with the best policies around irrigated landscape management, best policies around managing of forest lands, managing of farmlands, managing the water bodies, managing the rangelands, managing the mountains and the hills in a way that's sustainable, even under the emerging challenge of climate change. And then we also realized that a number of us, both through the other platform I mentioned called the Kenya Climate and Agriculture Multi-Stakeholder Platform, that I'm also part and parcel of, we actually worked out with the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya and came up with the climate change bill of the country. In that bill, which was passed by Parliament, it put Kenya at the forefront of dealing with climate change challenges altogether. And then Kenya being the host country of UNEP, and of course the UN Habitat and the UN Office for Africa, it has always been taking the lead and impacting the other neighboring countries on the climate change mitigation adaptation matters altogether. Then realize that, oh, we are having an impact not just in Kenya, but also in the neighboring countries. And then we now thought, because of the same people whom the government ends up coming to ask for help altogether, then let's form this coalition that will enable us now to have different themes. And one of the themes will be a theme around landscape policy influencing, so that we can now use that thematic group to be able to provide that policy think tank, kind of support to the 47 counties and even the state government of Kenya around landscape management. And that's how that aspect of the other enabling environment came in. And then, of course, that enabling condition that helped KenLAP come together in a meaningful way is also one that has now made us to say, yes, we now want as KenLAP to make it known to the government that we are not an international organization, neither are we a community-based organization, neither are we a government organization. We are basically a platform. We would like to be anchored into one of the ministries. And then we approached the government of Kenya. And they said, oh, okay. So we don't have a platform in Kenya that it has put together or puts together the different actors who work on the diverse landscapes. Therefore, this is a welcome idea. So what does anchoring mean? Just said, no, we just want to have a focal point of the ministry. And when we have specific events, or the ministry has specific events and or specific issues that you like to bring an organization of different actors on board to help out, we are available. Then they said, good. Now we give unto you the director of communications in the Ministry of Environment to be the focal point or anchor person that you can always talk to. And once you talk to him, he will know whether this is to be dealt with the Kenya Forest Services or Kenya Wildlife Services, or whether to engage the Kenya Water Towers Agency, or whether to engage any other institution in the Republic of Kenya. Thank you.
That's amazing. That's really incredible, and such an inspiring and kind of really effective way to engage the government in this really important work. We have a question from the audience that I'd like to sort of put together with a question that I have. So I'll start with this two-part question from Mike, and then I'll add mine. You mentioned a number of, first of all, Kenya has a wide range of different types of landscapes, and so consequently a wide range of landscape actors and partnerships. How many, roughly, as a rough estimate, would you identify how many landscape partnerships would you say are roughly across Kenya, and of that number, how many are currently part of KenLAP?
Actually, the partnership that we have so far are 60. These are landscapes in Kenya. But then something interesting is this. Some of them are so huge. Like, for example, the Mount Kenya region has got 6 counties. When we partnered with the Rainforest Alliance and then went there for training, and was one of the master trainers, for example, and then we began discussing with them. They all said, yes, we would like to join KenLAP. Now, within that Mount Kenya region, of that entire region, Laikipia is already part and parcel of that. So we have, like, of these 60, there are like some which have smaller landscape partnerships embedded within, that are part of the 60. And these 60 are across from the coastal belt, from the northern border with Somalia to the southern border with Tanzania. Now moving into the hinterland, then you get the uplands that are there and the arid and semi-arid areas. Then we get into the landscapes that are under conservation with Kenya Wildlife Services, the Amboseli National Park, Tsavo National Park, for example, and such like, the communities around there have got different issues, and they said, yes, we would like to be part and parcel of this. So in fact, we have gotten some sweet surprises of specific landscapes that have just joined us. And when you look at them, they are huge, and they are following the other smaller ones that joined a little bit much earlier. So we are now getting in the process of classifying the landscapes in terms of the geographical location, the size, and then now end up categorizing them. And our thematic group dealing with landscape monitoring is helping us with that. Thank you.
That's great. And that actually speaks to what my follow-up question was going to be when you mentioned that sweet surprise, is that I feel like when you're starting out with these types of coalitions, there are always actors that you sort of expect are going to be really engaged and really interested, the NGOs and folks that are, you know, already automatically really invested. But have you been, in addition to those sweet surprises, have you been surprised at any particular group or actor that you thought maybe wouldn't be as engaged, and now they're, you know, they're one of the most engaged groups, or one that you thought maybe wouldn't be interested in joining the coalition and has now really expressed a lot of interest? Any surprises there?
Yes, the first surprise is that Mount Kenya region, we actually approached the so-called friendly community-based organizations, community forest associations, through the National Community Forest Associations of Kenya, NACOFA, who are part and parcel of us. So when we were talking with them, then they said, but we have got the coffee sector and the tea sector, and that's a private sector, by the way. Then the coffee sector that is there within Mount Kenya and the tea sector said, yes, we are part and parcel of, we stay in landscapes. So why would you want to focus more on community-based organizations and leave out the coffee factories and tea factories and these coffee cooperatives that actually are doing shared coffee altogether, and they are integrating coffee and agroforestry and tea and agroforestry? And that was the surprise that we got, that a private sector entity and cooperatives also want to be part and parcel of this. And then the second one, surprise that we got here is there are two transboundary landscapes, one between Kenya and Uganda, and then one between Kenya and Tanzania, that actually joined. And they say, no, we're not joining as the Kenyan component of the landscape. We are joining as both the Tanzanian landscape component cluster and the Kenya cluster, so that we can end up learning from each other, because the transboundary landscapes are unique. So now the so-called Tsavo Heritage Group that involves the Tsavo game parks in southeastern Kenya towards Kilimanjaro is a transboundary landscape where across the border in Tanzania, they end up registering a similar entity for legal purposes altogether, and it's called Kilimanjaro Heritage Group. And it's the same team altogether, but they work on same principles. And then they said, please, we would like to be able to have the Tanzanian team learn from the way we are doing our landscape initiatives in Kenya, including the platform, similar to the one in Mount Elgon between Uganda and even Kenya. Now, apart from that, the landscape in Tanzania, the transboundary one, because they also keep meeting in various events, they met. So then in the course of one of the meetings, we purposed and planned that we want to have visibility. And one of those to have visibility in Kenya and make our presence felt is to have, if possible, yearly conferences convened by KenLAP to be able to discuss activities, latest innovations, progress we are making towards policy influencing, impact at scale, and therefore we plan for our first KenLAP conference on the 4th to 8th of November in the year 2024. We are fundraising for that and we are busy publicizing it. When the Tanzanian team transmitted a hand about it, they informed their colleagues in Tanzania. Separately, the Tanzanian people who are different landscapes told us, please, when you have your conference in Nairobi in the first week of November, will you invite us? We want to come and listen in. And after that, will you please hold our hands and help us establish a similar platform in Tanzania? And those are the sweet surprises that actually have come.
That's incredible. That's really amazing. Wow. And very inspiring as well. We have about 20 minutes left, and I want to give folks, I know I asked the question on behalf of Mike, but I also want this to be more of a sort of discussion dialogue. So I want to give folks who have other questions a chance to ask themselves. Max, did you want to ask your question that you shared in the chat?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, can I hear you, Max?
Okay, nice. How are you, John?
Doing
Thank
well,
you so
Max.
much. Really interesting to hear you and know a little more about your experience, your trajectory. My question is, I think I try to, understand how is the process going and sometimes make some parallel with the Latin American experiences. If you could get us an overview of how developed or the level of maturity of these landscape partnerships in Kenya, possibly giving us some ideas, for example, using the ILM wheel, the framework with the landscape partnership, sharing understanding, planning, action, more or less how are these landscape partnerships developed, if they are more in a starting phase and getting their initial agreements, or they already have landscape plans that came out from these partnerships. I would be very interesting, like to have an idea on that. Thank you.
Good. So based on the tool of the landscape management tool the wheel in terms of vision and planning and taking action, learning and impact, the shared understanding, they are at different levels. The apex partnerships that we can talk about in Kenya, we have always mentioned them, are the ones around like Kipia, which is a semi-arid part, and part of it is high potential. Then there is one on Lake Naivasha ecosystem management rehabilitation. Then there's one called Kijabe, Environmental Volunteers. Those are like the apex because they began some time back. It has been like over a 10-year journey, and eco-agriculture has been involved. They are the ones I was mentioning, that the ones that I kept meeting from the year 2011, 2012, 2013, moving forward altogether. And so they actually form part of the core team of core group of KenLAP. Now, what is emerging, and that's why I talked about the issue of wanting to work together. It's because the partners that are there, our partnerships that are there, are in geographical areas, and in these geographical areas, they work with different objectives and different either donors and or different interest groups. For example, the Rainforest Alliance team has been working around Mount Kenya, but not Mount Elgon in the western part of Kenya. The IUCN has been working in some rangelands. Then there is the Rangeland Trusts Kenya that's working in the rangelands. Then there is one working in the coastal area around the mangroves. Some of them have worked on some visioning and planning, but not all. Some are at the level of taking action. in the wheel, and then some are at the level of just starting off altogether and seeing how they can work together. But they have got, for example, this donor who is IUCN, or they have got this person who is helping them, and it is the European Union or a World Bank project that is for 3, 4, 5 years altogether. So as they leave, the level of sustainability in terms of getting this managed sustainably differs, because the engagement and the champions who are there differ. So what we are now basically doing here is we want to have this platform to be able to document at which level the landscapes which are in the rangelands are in, most of them, if they are mostly around visioning process that they're in altogether, then we work with them to co-create the vision through the stakeholder process that is there through the platform, and then help them to come up with like technical solutions using specific tools that are there through ILM or through any other method that they know, so that there is capacity building for the stakeholders for landscape management with technical support either from national government of Kenya or the county government or development partners or whoever is available. And then we now work with them towards getting the adaptive management with the feedback loops. And then as we keep meeting in these safe spaces through the platform, then we also end up finding out which other stakeholders do they need to bring on board so that they can end up having a robust environment, and robust, for example, landscape. So they are at different, levels, but most of them are, I'll say, at the level of visioning for those which are mega. Otherwise, they do small activities at a level of 1,000 households or something like that, or within a sub-county, within the county, to just focus on through a farmer cooperative or through a community-based organization and do specific activities. But most of them already have a vision, which sometimes isn't very clear because they are formed and they always have something like a constitution which needs to have that kind of vision. But beyond that, towards capacity building and technical solutions, there is a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Very interesting. I'd like to ask many more questions, but I'll let everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, John, and thank you, Max. Are there any, I want to open the floor. We have about 15 minutes left. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask John a question? Feel free to raise your hand or just go for it. I also have a few up my sleeve in case we want to tackle those as well. Katie.
So I'm just thinking about looking forward, John. What do you need, or what do the landscapes need to really all thrive? And are there ways that to thrive individually, but also maybe to thrive together? Are there ways that you want them to interact more? So is there anything you need that either we can help with or just we can learn from? And then at the individual level and the collaborative level. Thanks.
Yes, we have got 6 thematic working groups. And these thematic working groups that are there in the country for KenLAP have monthly meetings as a thematic working group. And then at the end of the month, we have a countrywide meeting, which is a virtual meeting altogether to just get to know where the different thematic working groups are at. Now, these thematic working groups are out to do specific initiatives. Like there is one on landscape finance and innovation. Then there is the thematic work. This one is to use landscape finance principles to collaborate, link access resources together for the landscape actors. That is a big need. And then also there is one specifically on co-creation, knowledge, field management. This specific thematic working group supports the implementation of sustainable and resilient landscape practices and is the one that strengthens the capacity of landscape actors to design, implement, and communicate the climate and landscape smart practices to reverse degradation and build sustainable livelihoods. One of the things that we need are strategic partnerships that can help us to get to build capacity through training and also build capacity of the landscapes to be able to do fundraising on their own, but also even guide in terms of linkages to a possible landscape finance initiatives that they can be able to access on their own, or use KenLAP to be able to have some people who are skilled to be able to help write proposals, submit, so that it can help to raise finances altogether that can help to fund activities that are done at landscape scale. So what right now we need is strategic partnership to raise funds and build capacity to be able to scale up ILM in Kenya and help to reverse the degradation that is there within many landscapes, because the ongoing degradation is because the growing population, especially in the high potential areas, are using practices that are not sustainable to do their farming and contributing to the degradation altogether, while they are doing that to look for sufficient food to secure food security, but in a way they are creating food insecurity. Therefore, there is a very big need to have one, landscape finance, innovation, and as well as capacity building to have the right practices, the right knowledge to be able to do activities, because they're knowledge intensive, in the right way. And this is to complement what the government of Kenya is doing, because the government devolved the functions of landscape activities to the counties, and counties decide, but because of challenges in terms of hiring expertise and or employment, which is frozen because of all these structural identity problems altogether, the government needs the help of people who are in like this kind of platform, and even other stakeholders, development partners, to complement it in terms of educating the masses to help reverse the degradation. And as population is growing, right now 5 million people, we need to work more towards food security for this population that's growing. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. I think Mike and Luis had their hands up. I don't know who had their hands up first. I'll give the mic to Mike.
Give the mic to Mike. And if there's time, I'd like to ask a question, but Katie asked a question very similar to what I wanted to ask.
Okay, great.
So I just wanted to ask John, you know, you've talked about like the landscapes and the landscape partnerships themselves, but for this platform that you have, you know, the kind of Herculean task of standing this up and knitting these landscapes together based on what sounds like a groundswell of interest from people. It was very organic. Now that you've got this thing together, what are your highest ambitions, not for the landscapes themselves, but for the platform of landscapes? What do you want to do if all obstacles disappeared for this platform? And then have you identified, I know you've obviously, and we all talk about funding and some of the capacity strengthening at the landscape level, but have you identified any really large obstacles to the coalition itself?
Yes. We would like to do this. The impact that is empowering the landscape leaders across Kenya with the knowledge and skills that drive the efforts of restoration needs to be done in such a way that all the actors are actually buying into the platform's ability of doing it, the platform's ability to influence policy, being in touch with policy influencers and participating in national events. That hasn't been demonstrated yet. When I had a talk with people of Common Land, and we had a talk with the team from IUCN, we have had discussions with the people from WWF, we have had discussions with the Conservation International, we have had a discussion with some people from actually UNDP in Kenya and even FAO in Kenya. And at this stage, one thing that they are doing is they are having a wait and see approach. And it's like, okay, it sounds interesting, but can we just see how the platform evolves in the first year? And all of these people, by the way, said we would like to send a representative to sit into one of the thematic working groups. So they have got someone who is inside there, who is studying and finding out how the discussions are ongoing together within the thematic working group. And they are trying to gather some intelligence and find out, so is this a serious platform? And or are they just, is there just something that will lose momentum? And I think we need to be able to develop either trust or to win people as of right now, and specifically the international organizations that are here in Kenya. Because those which are local, national NGOs, as well as community-based organizations, don't have a problem altogether. And I think the matter of winning trust. However, one of the things that we see ourselves doing is we want to be able to showcase the benefits of sustainable rural development with some practical tools that we can be able to share with different landscapes. And therefore, we see ourselves that ultimately accelerating the scaling up of successful practices which are resilient to the changing climate and contribute to more improved livelihoods and a sustainable future for the Kenyan landscapes. So I am seeing ourselves as a vehicle to accelerate the scaling up of the best practices or best practices altogether, which could be suitable for the rangelands, suitable for the hills, suitable for the water bodies in terms of just restoration and doing things that can make the people derive better livelihoods. Thank you.
Awesome. And just in time, Luis, we have 4 minutes left for your question and closing.
Okay, real quickly, John. Regarding this trust building, do you think it's important to be able to provide, research-based sort of scientific evidence when we get to the level of really trying to influence these big influencers? They can learn so much by coming to meetings and hearing what you have to say and experiencing your energy and all that kind of thing. But I just wonder if you talk within your coalition about the need for, further, quote, proof in the more conventional sense of developing that proof.
In fact, yes, what you're talking is what is part of the agenda at the end of this month. And one of the people whom you know, that is from WWF, Nancy Rapando, is the Africa lead in WWF on food security matters, is actually helping us to think through together. And we all are publicizing the conference and are inviting these big international organizations to come and participate. And as of right now, we are blessed that the Rockefeller Foundation is providing some substantial funding for the conference, and they'll be there, as well as the CGIAR Impact Platform on biodiversity conservation will be there. And we want to use them specifically to be able to bring also on board the other big organizations. And we have sessions in the conference that talk about the research evidence that informs activities that can be done at scale within the landscapes. And one of the things that we have as an advantage is, one, we're already endorsed by the government of Kenya. The forthcoming conference will be opened by the Minister for Environment. And when they go to the COP UNCCD after our conference, they are going to mention KenLAP as one of the useful platforms in Kenya that's being used to accelerate landscape restoration and reversing degradation, for example. And so we think we are placed strategically to be able to prove ourselves. And process of winning trust, takes years. Yeah. And many steps to go altogether. But I think one step at a time is what we are making, and we're on the right path. And any suggestions and ideas are welcome to help us win that kind of trust and end up getting to the level like we have the so-called Kenya Human Rights Commission, which in a year has got like $250 million budget provided by donors to be able to do something like that.
Fantastic. Exciting.
Amazing. Well, so we are just at time right now. I want to say a special thank you to John for all of the wonderful topics and discussion that you shared with us, and taking the time to just be with us today at our first lunchtime brown bag. Would also love to thank our guests, Katie and Siobhan and Courtney, for joining us, and hope to see you guys at many more of these. We'll be sure to follow up with an invitation to the next one as well. So thank you everyone so much. Special thank you to John, and we will definitely see you next time.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.